ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.
Hi there, it's just me today, and I just wanted to share a few thoughts about Tron Ares, which is the third film now in the Tron franchise after the first film from way back in 1982 and then Tron Legacy in 2010. Essentially, the story is about two big tech firms, Encom and Dillinger Systems. Both of these companies are looking for ways to perfect their technology, which are bringing AI into the real world. So this is kind of a flip on the premise of the original film, where you saw Kevin Flynn being sucked into the grid, as they call it. Here, it's doing the opposite thing. It's bringing characters from the grid, from the computer world, the virtual world, into the real world. And as one might suspect, Dillinger, the evil corporation, is trying to use these for malevolent means. They're trying to build a weapon system that can be essentially created and then destroyed and regenerated in real time wherever it might be needed. At the front of all of this is Ares, who's their new super soldier, played here by Jared Leto. So at the beginning of the film, we see him brought into the real world where he can do anything even better than a regular soldier can. You know, he's super strong, super fast, all the rest of it. But there is a downside. After 29 minutes, he collapses. Now, this is a problem being faced by both of these companies, and they're both in search of something called the Permanence Code, which will enable them to bring their creations into the real world indefinitely. As one might suspect in a film like this, however, the plot, such as it is, comes a distant second to the audio visual experience. If this is a movie that you're going to go see, need to go see it big. You need to go see it loud. I was lucky enough to go see it on the IMAX here in Hong Kong, where it's just opened. And it really is sort of one of those all-encompassing audio visual experiences. You know, the Nine Inch Nails score here is reverberates right through you. The bass is almost too strong. I remember actually a few years ago, I did go and see Nine Inch Nails play live, and I'm going to put my hands up. I left early because just the strength of those bass lines through your chest was a little too much for my delicate disposition. The score here is great. It's notable that Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor are using the Nine Inch Nails moniker rather than their own names for the last sort of couple of decades now. They've been scoring movies to award-winning effect under their own names, and actually, I think it's been decades since Nine Inch Nails actually did anything. But here they have made that choice. Apparently, Disney requested that they do this under the Nine Inch Nails banner, and it does lend a certain sort of brand recognition to the type of music that they are bringing to this film. In stark contrast to the variety of styles that they would perform under their own names, which ranged from sort of Social Network to even Pixar movies like Soul, for which they won Oscars on both occasions, I believe. Visually, I mean, as you might have seen from the trailers or from some of the clips, the film is awash in neon. Red seems to be the dominant color here, which is used to represent characters who have come from the grid into the real world. This film, this time out, is being directed by Joachim Roning. He's a Norwegian filmmaker who was Oscar nominated for Kon-Tiki. He's been previously worked with Disney on the Maleficent sequel and the last Pirates of the Caribbean film. He's clearly a guy who likes to use a lot of visual effects, but he's also a guy that plays nice with Disney, with the big studio. He will do the task assigned to him without much problem. So this comes across as, very much a sort of a big, shiny corporate piece of work rather than anything that has too much of a directorial signature to it. It feels very much like a theme park ride, and that is no coincidence. I think in Shanghai there is already a Tron light cycle ride, and recently that has been given a new skin in order to shift its theme from Legacy over to Ares here. For a film that is ostensibly about AI and how AI is used in the real world. The film has very little actually to say on the subject. It's talking about military repurposing of this technology. And while it illustrates some of the flaws in that. It doesn't really seem to come down on one side or the other about, whether advances in AI are necessarily objectively good or bad. It's all about, if you believe the movie, how it is purposed, how it is put to use, that there are inherently good ways that you can use this kind of technology. And obviously, coming from a big corporation like Disney, that is to be expected, but is also somewhat disappointing. Fans of science fiction will see a lot of echoes of themes drawn from the likes of Blade Runner. We have essentially an android, speculating what it must be like to be human. Terminator 2 is a big touch point here as well. He's talking about, I know now why you cry. It's something I can never do, trying and failing to understand the human experience. We see a lot of those themes being touched upon. The script actually touches on Frankenstein as well, but I think that is a bit of an overreach for the filmmakers themselves. I don't think their film ever manages to reach those sort of lofty intellectual themes that the character is going for here. And that is echoed actually throughout a lot of the film, that it doesn't really have much substance to it, much like the character Ares himself. He is struggling to find some gravitas, some permanence, some innate, inherent sort of physicality to himself, and the film feels like desperately searching for something like that. It is big and loud, it is bright and shiny, but on the inside there isn't a lot going on. And far too often the big spectacle sequences, there's a light cycle chase through the center of the city, which I think was shot in Vancouver, but I don't think we actually know which city it's supposed to be set in, are all good and well, but there are no consequences to those actions, and the film doesn't really have anything to say. Now, a lot of the supporting cast actually do quite good work. I think Greta Lee does quite good work in the sort of central heroine character. She has been around for a while, but has really come into her own since Past Lives, the Celine Song movie from a couple of years ago. So this is something of a strange choice for her to sort of take front and center position in a big, action-packed, effects-heavy blockbuster like this. And I think she acquits herself quite admirably in a role that doesn't really demand too much of her dramatically. Jodie Turner-Smith as Athena, one of the other programs from the grid, also makes for, a very aesthetically pleasing antagonist, shall we say. But I think a lot of people are hesitant to go see this film, or are tripping over the fact that Jared Leto is very much front and center here. And he is, he's something of a problematic personality for a lot of people for a number of different reasons. Despite having an Oscar on his mantle, the jury is still out for a lot of people about whether he is or isn't, a substantial screen presence or not. And I don't think this film is going to really bolster his argument that he is a good actor. He has this very sort of messianic image in this movie. I spent a lot of the time looking at him. He's got long straggly hair and a thick beard, thinking, why would you create a super soldier with that much hair? It seems like a very bizarre choice there. And he plays the character of Ares, who, lest we forget, is a computer program brought to life, with a kind of deadpan monotone. I think what he's going for is some kind of subtle sort of Pinocchio, wood to flesh kind of evolution, but that doesn't really come across. I think if you already have an issue with Jared Leto, it is not going to be waylaid here at all. So all in all, what you get is a movie that is very big, very loud, very stupid a lot of the time, increasingly ridiculous with just how its set pieces play out, with the ability that characters are able to move from the real world to the computer world and back again with remarkable ease. A willing suspension of disbelief is required at a level that may prove too much for too many people. That is not to say, however, that it is not without its sort of entertainment value. I think some of it is so ludicrous, so preposterous, so just inherently dumb that half the times you'll roll your eyes at it, half the time you'll be laughing at it. but on occasion, if you go with it, there is some fun to be had. It wasn't, as some critics have said, the worst film of the year. I've seen some very, very negative reviews, and I think that people have, they're just sharpening their knives. I think for Jared Leto as much as anything else. I don't have that fondness for the franchise as many do. I remember watching the first film quite regularly as a child, but when revisiting it as an adult, I kind of just found it a bit dull, to be honest. With Tron Legacy from 2010. I know that that has a very passionate fan base of younger moviegoers. For me, that was one of those cases where you had a fantastic trailer that did not turn into a rewarding movie. The idea of Jeff Bridges' character evolving into some kind of sort of spiritual enlightened guru on the other side of the technological plane doesn't land for me at all, and is something that is continued on in here in probably the only character I think who's been carried over from the earlier film. So if you're literally just looking for something big and loud and splashy and shiny for the weekend, then I think you will find something here. However, it is also incredibly airheaded, incredibly stupid, incredibly dumb, and I think lacks the self-awareness that its central character is searching for.
You ought to be in pictures, oh, what a hit you would be. Your voice